Because evidently I'm currently obsessed with rag projects, we're gonna do a rag stocking. So I started with 48 pieces of 5x5 inch fabric. Now, mine are all different, but you do it the way that you want it. So I have 48 printed pieces of fabric, 24 for one side of my stocking and 24 for the other. Then I have 2 pieces of flannel between each piece. I've sewn all of mine except for one, and we're gonna sew that one together so I can show you what to do. We're gonna take one piece of our 5x5 fabric and lay it face down. We're gonna take our 2 pieces of flannel. I have mine doubled, I just like it doubled. Now, y'all can do not double, or you can do 3 pieces or 12 pieces, it doesn't matter to me, whatever you like. Or you can use batting, but if you use your batting, then make sure you cut it smaller than your square. You don't want all that hairy hanging off. And if you're using batting, you need to use flannel on the front and the back, because if your quilt doesn't have some kind of flannel in it, it won't fray so pretty. So now we're gonna sew an X with a straight stitch from corner to corner and corner to corner. Easy peasy. So I've sewn a straight line from this corner to this corner and this corner to this corner. I've made an X on my pieces. Now, you're gonna do all of your pieces the same way. You want your pretty sides to the outside, your flannel on the inside, and after you do that, then we're gonna put them together. I've already sewn mine, so the next thing we're gonna do is lay out how we want our stockings to look. And I'm just like y'all. Placing the fabric is the hardest part. This is made with 5" by 5" squares, and I need 48 total, 24 for the front and 24 for the back. If you have a charm pack, there's only 42 in there. You could use that and then just use the same fabric for the back. Instead of using pieces from your charm pack, just cut some pieces into 5" squares, or do like I did and use a layer cake, and then you cut your fabric in half and in half again, and you have plenty for both stockings. So I've laid mine out. Let me see what y'all can see. Can you see how we have mirror images? We have the toes facing each other, because what is worse than not having the toes facing each other is when you sew it together and then your stocking will not go together. So you need to make sure you have mirror images when you lay your pieces out. You want 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12. Make sure you have 12 pieces and they are with toes pointed together. Now we're gonna sew them together. We're gonna sew our rows together, and then we're gonna sew our rows into our big piece that's then gonna become our Christmas stocking. So when we sew them together, we're gonna pick up 2 pieces and lay them pretty sides on the outside. You see, these are my 2 pieces. I'm picking them up. I have pretty side on the outside. I'm gonna sew this with a straight stitch, just right down this side. After I do that, then I'm gonna lay it down, because there's only 2 in this piece, because it's the toe of my stocking, and then I'm gonna sew these together. Now, we're gonna sew this with a straight stitch, and I always tell y'all 1/4" seam, but since we've been doing these rag projects, I've spent half of my life fixing holes that I've made when I'm clipping it, so make your seam a little wider, 5/8, 1/2 inch, or as big as you want it to be. It's your project, nobody's the boss of you. We're gonna start by sewing right here, straight stitch, a little wider seam, back stitching when we start and when we stop, because my grandma said so. Okay, here is our first piece. You see how we've sewn it? We've sewn it just like that. And after we sew our stocking together, we're gonna come back and clip these. I'm gonna lay this one right here. Now I'm gonna sew these 2 rows. I'm going to pick them up, placing from the top to the bottom, one on top of the next one. And then I'm going to put a clip on the very first square. So when I pick these first 2 squares up, I know that I want the pretty sides on the outside, like this, pretty side, and I'm gonna sew right here. After I sew that, I'm gonna open it up, and then I'm gonna add the next square. My clip is there to tell me that's the top of my row, but if you're concerned at all about getting your rows mixed up, just take a picture before you start, or let them get mixed up, and it doesn't matter, I promise. So I'm gonna sew this together, then I'm gonna open it up, add the next one and the next one, and I'm gonna sew all of my rows together, and then we'll put our rows together to make our stocking. This fabric is Good Tidings by Andover, and y'all, it's so precious. And I love all the Christmas fabrics. It all kind of depends on what mood I'm in. I love the pinks and teals, but then I love the traditionals. What do y'all like? I have 2 trees in my house. One of them is traditional, and it has all of our family ornaments on it, and the other one is full of glitter and candy and ice cream and all things little girl. And I really don't have a favorite. One of them is incredibly beautiful to look at, and the other one is so sentimental. Okay, so we've sewn all of our our squares together. Now let's sew our rows together. Remember, we have these clips to tell us it's the top. So we're gonna pick up the first two. And this one is the toe of one face of the stocking. So I'm gonna pick it up and put it pretty side on the outside, okay? And we're gonna sew it from the bottom up. Straight stitch, a little wider seam, so maybe you don't have to fix as many holes as I have to fix. And yes, back stitching when we start and when we stop. We've sewn that together. Now we're gonna sew this other row to it. Same way, pretty sides on the outside, straight stitch, a little wider seam as we go down. I'm currently obsessed with rag projects because they're so much fun to make, and I super love the raggy edges. All right, this is one side of our stocking. Dun, dun, dun. We're gonna put it to the side, and we're gonna sew the other side of our stocking exactly the same way. Next, I went to hometownquiltcompany.com and I downloaded the stocking pattern. We are going to lay that on top of our rag pieces. We're gonna pin it down and we're gonna cut our stocking out. Now we're gonna cut one out facing this way, and then we're gonna turn our stocking pattern over and cut the other piece out facing that way so that our toes are pointed in the same direction whenever we go to put our pieces together. But first, before we put our stocking together, let's sew across here, across the top of both pieces of our stocking, because we could sew it when we're finished, but we might as well sew it now when it's a little easier to sew. We're just gonna sew down it so that we have something to clip, so that the top of it rags too. So you're gonna sew it with the same seam allowance that you've sewn everything else with, whatever you've decided. 5/8 or 1.5 inches, whatever you got. This is gonna make it easier in just 1 minute. Now, we're gonna lay our stocking pieces together with our toes pointed at the same direction. Do you see that? And we're just gonna sew all the way around with the same seam allowance, because we're gonna come back and clip that so it will rag too. So you're gonna start here, you're gonna sew all the way around, and when you get back to here, you're gonna stop. But before you do that, let's put a hook on it if you want a hook. If you don't want a hook, then don't do it. But I think probably everybody wants a hook. So you're gonna take your hook piece. I used a piece of ribbon that's 1 inch wide by 6 inches long. I'm folding it in half, and I'm just gonna put it where I want my hook, which would be at the very top of my stocking, just like that. And now I'm gonna come and I'm gonna sew all the way around so that I can clip it and make it rag and be so super pretty. You're gonna sew this with the same seam allowance that you've sewn the rest of your stocking. You're just sewing it far enough in that you have space to clip it so that it'll rag nice and pretty all the way around the edges. We've sewn them together. Now we're gonna go and clip all the way around the outside and every seam in the center. And I was doing these and clipping them about 1/2 inch apart, and y'all yelled at me and said they needed to be clipped closer together. And somebody said 1/8 inch, and I ain't got that kind of patience. But the closer you clip them, the prettier it will rag. And you're gonna have the most gorgeous Christmas stocking. All right, you clip yours and I'm gonna clip mine. Here's our hook. The next thing you're gonna do is throw it in the washing machine and then in the dryer. Now, when you put it in the dryer, clean out your lint catcher before you start, and then probably about every 10 minutes, because it will fill your dryer up. Unless you're like me, and in that case, they make this snazzy nail brush. It's just the brush you clean your nails with that I'm using. I'm gonna wash mine too, but I don't have the patience to wait. I get too excited. Oh my goodness, it's turning out so super cute. Don't y'all love it? If the stocking was too long, then just don't put these top pieces and you would have a little shorter stocking. I'm super excited to see the ones y'all make. My name is Tammy. I'm your favorite sewing teacher, and I would love for you to come sew with me.